important systems in pharmacology, that is cardiovascular, endocrine, and blood. So the learning objective of this session, at the end of this session, second BDS student shall be able to enumerate the mechanism of action, therapeutic uses, and ADR of at least the prototype drugs used for the treatment of various cardiovascular, endocrine, hematological disorders, which are included in the pharmacology immunology dental syllabus. So we start with the cardiovascular system. First, the anti-anginal agents.
Good morning.
Angina pectoris is a pain syndrome which is characterized by severe substernal pain that radiates to the left arm. The main cause of angina is imbalance between the oxygen supply and the oxygen demand. Therefore, strategies to treat angina basically improves the balance between this oxygen supply and oxygen demand. Now, there are various determinants of oxygen supply. First is afterload, which is mainly determined by the arteries. Vasodilatation of the arteries will reduce the afterload and increase the oxygen supply. The determinants of oxygen demand include the heart rate, the force of contraction. The determinants of oxygen demand include heart rate, contraction, and preload. Preload is mainly determined by the veins. So drugs which cause venodilatation will reduce the preload, and also drugs which reduce the heart rate, force of contraction will reduce the oxygen demand. Therefore, anti-anginal drugs will either reduce the oxygen demand or they will increase the oxygen supply and therefore will be useful in angina pectoris. Now coming to the classification of the drugs used in angina. So there are 4 important classes: nitrates, calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, potassium channel openers. Now out of this, nitrates is the prototype drug, which is conventionally used for the treatment of angina. Now when we talk about nitrates, there are several nitrates, out of which you have glyceryl trinitrate, which is also known as nitroglycerine, GTN, and isosorbide dinitrate. They are available as sublingual tablets. For oral, we have isosorbide dinitrate and mononitrate, which are used for prophylaxis of angina. Coming to the mechanism of action, how these nitrates act. Now these nitrates are converted to nitrites. These nitrites are rich in nitric oxide. So they release nitric oxide, which activates the guanyl cyclase, which is present in the vascular endothelium. So there is an increase in cyclic GMP, which activates the protein kinases, and there is dephosphorylation of myosin light chain kinase, which is present in the blood vessels. So there is vasodilatation of both the arteries and the veins. When we talk about nitrates, it mainly causes vasodilatation of the veins, so the preload is reduced. And as we had discussed, when the preload is reduced, what reduces is the oxygen demand, and that is the objective in treatment of angina. Now, important pharmacokinetics, glyceryl trinitrate or nitroglycerine is administered sublingually. So for the treatment of acute attack of angina, GTN is given sublingually. It has a quick onset of action and a short duration of action. It is highly lipid soluble and therefore as a sublingual tablet, it is effective. Adverse effects with nitrates, headache, these are all vasodilators, so they will cause dilatation of the cranial blood vessels, causing headache. There is postural hypotension. There is a reflex tachycardia which occurs. And on a long-term basis, tolerance develops with the use of nitrates. Certain drug rashes have been reported with the use of nitrates, and these drugs should be tapered, otherwise there could be withdrawal syndromes. Therapeutic uses of nitrates. For acute attack of angina pectoris, we have glyceryl trinitrate or isosorbide dinitrate, isosorbide mononitrate, and oral dinitrate are used for prophylaxis. in all types of angina, whether it is stable angina, unstable angina, and variant angina. Because of its vasodilatory properties, IV nitroglycerin is used in the treatment of congestive cardiac failure. Again, for the healing of the ulcers, again vasodilatation is caused by these nitrates, so they help in the healing of the tropic ulcers. They have smooth muscle relaxation properties. So various colic or pain which is because of spasm, biliary, ureteric and renal colic, there also nitrates are effective. Cyanide poisoning. Okay, here amyl nitrate and sodium nitrite, they are indicated for this type of poisoning. These nitrates, they convert hemoglobin to methemoglobin, and we know that cyanide has a higher affinity for methemoglobin. It forms cyanomethoglobin, which can be easily excreted when IV sodium thiosulfate is added. So these are the therapeutic uses of nitrates. Then we come to the next class of drugs, that is calcium channel blockers. There are three subclasses: phenylalkylamines, benzothiazepines, dihydropyridamines. The prototype drugs being verapamil, diltiazem, and amlodipine, nifedipine under dihydropyridamines. Now, when we talk about calcium channels, they are either present in the smooth muscles, that is in the blood vessels, or in the heart. We know that in the smooth muscles, calcium has a role to play in smooth muscle contraction. And in the heart, it plays an important role in myocardial contraction. So when we block the entry of calcium, it will cause smooth muscle relaxation, causing dilatation of the arteries and the veins. When we talk about calcium channel blockers, they are mainly dilators of the arteries. So they will reduce the afterload, because of which the oxygen supply is increased. When we talk about the action on the heart, when the calcium channels are blocked in the heart, there is a decrease in the heart rate and the force of contraction, which reduces the oxygen demand. Okay. Now these calcium channels may be present in the heart as well as in the blood vessels. Verapamil is mainly effective against calcium channels which are present in the heart, whereas the dihydropyridamines, nifedipine, is mainly effective against calcium channels which are present on the blood vessels. Okay, so this is one important difference besides being in different subclasses of the calcium channel blockers. Another major difference is the action on the heart. Verapamil, because it is mainly acting on the calcium channels present in the heart, it will reduce the heart rate. Whereas nifedipine, because it's effective mainly against the calcium channels in the blood vessels, it will cause vasodilatation and there will be a reflex tachycardia. Okay, so these are important differences between the three subclasses of calcium channel blockers. What are the adverse effects of calcium channel blockers? Okay. So they cause hypotension. Okay. They are vasodilators, so postural hypotension, flushing, headache, ankle edema, which is pitting in nature. Okay. There is constipation, its action on the GIT. Digital dysesthesia, so the digits become super sensitive, highly sensitive. And depending upon the calcium channels blockers, whether if it's verapamil, it causes bradycardia. If it is nifedipine, it can cause tachycardia. Uses of calcium channel blockers, mainly for prophylaxis of angina pectoris. They are used for all types of angina. Now, action of verapamil on the heart is to reduce the heart rate, which is exploited therapeutically in supraventricular arrhythmias, where the heart rate goes up. So verapamil can reduce the heart rate. In hypertension, amlodipine, this drug causes vasodilatation and hence reduces the blood pressure. Okay. Then verapamil, then nicardipine are all used for prophylaxis of migraine. So these are the important uses of calcium channel blockers. Coming to the third class of drugs, the beta blockers. So remember, in angina, beta blockers mainly have the hemodynamic benefits. Okay, so they will block the beta 1 receptors which are present in the heart, and we know that beta 1 receptors basically mediate increase in heart rate, force of contraction and velocity of conduction. And initially we had discussed that oxygen demand is determined by the heart rate and contractility. Since these drugs reduce heart rate and contractility, they will reduce the oxygen demand. Okay, so they are mainly useful for prophylaxis of angina. One important point here you have to remember is that they are contraindicated in variant or the Prinzmetal angina because they cause unopposed alpha-mediated vasoconstriction. So the principles of management, very briefly, acute attack you all have to remember. You have glyceryl trinitrate and isosorbide dinitrate sublingual tablets for short-term prophylaxis to prevent any exertion, okay, like you want to climb uphill. There, for short-term, you can use nitroglycerin sustained release tablets or transdermal patches are there. For long-term prophylaxis, beta blockers are the drug of choice. If not controlled alone with beta blockers, you can add drugs from different classes, whether it is nitrates or even calcium channel blockers. Okay. Now coming to the must-know questions under this topic, rationale for using GTN in angina pectoris, nitrates, routes and preparations which we have discussed, why beta blockers are contraindicated in variant angina, calcium channel blockers short note, and LAQ, classify anti-anginal drugs, right mechanism, uses and ADR of GTN. Okay. So with this, now we move on to the second topic under cardiovascular system, that is antihypertensive drugs. We know that hypertension is sustained increase in the blood pressure, which is systolic more than 140 and diastolic more than 90 millimeters of mercury. And based on the JNC guidelines, which is their Joint National Committee guidelines on the prevention, detection, evaluation and treatment of hypertension, we classify hypertension into stage 1 and stage 2 depending upon the systolic and the diastolic blood pressure recordings. Now, which are the antihypertensive drugs? Okay, so as a LEQ, classification of these drugs are very important. Okay, so we'll just go through the different classes which can be used for the treatment of hypertension and then discuss in detail regarding the first line drugs. Okay, so the array of drugs which can be used for treatment include diuretics. You have thiazide diuretics, okay, which are mainly preferred. Then you also have high ceiling furosemide, direct renin inhibitors like aliskiren, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, ACE inhibitors, captopril, lisinopril, and enalapril, angiotensin receptor blockers, losartan, valsartan, centrally acting drugs like clonidine, methyl dopa can be used. You can also use blockers for the adrenergic system like beta blockers. You have metoprolol, atenolol, or you have alpha blockers like prazosin. Both alpha and beta blockers can also be used like labetalol and carvedilol. Then under calcium channel blockers, we have verapamil, nifedipine, amlodipine. Conventionally, ganglionic blockers were used, okay? The use has declined, but drugs like trimethoprim were earlier used. Then vasodilators, if they mainly act on the arteries, they reduce the afterload like hydralazine, minoxidil, or it could dilate both arteries and the veins like sodium nitroprusside. Now under this, we should all be very familiar with the important first line drug for hypertension, that is ACE inhibitors. Okay, so a quick recap, angiotensinogen pathway. Okay, so angiotensinogen is converted to angiotensin 1 with the help of the enzyme renin. Now this angiotensin 2 is then converted to angiotensin 1 is further converted to angiotensin 2 with the help of the enzyme ACE. Now this angiotensin 2, once it is produced, has several detrimental effects, like it's a potent vasoconstrictor, so it will increase the blood pressure. Similarly, it will cause release of aldosterone. Aldosterone we know causes sodium and water retention. This can further contribute to the rise in blood pressure. Then angiotensin 2 also reduces bradykinin levels. Bradykinin levels, these bradykinins are potent vasodilators. These angiotensin 2 also causes increase in central sympathetic discharge. Okay, so via various mechanisms, they can all contribute to the increase in the blood pressure. So when you give ACE inhibitors, they will block the enzyme angiotensin converting, okay, enzyme that is ACE, and as a result, they will reduce the sympathetic discharge, they will increase bradykinin levels, they will inhibit vasoconstriction, and they will also reduce the sodium and water retention All this contributes to the fall in blood pressure. Okay, so it's not only through inhibition of vasoconstriction, but you are also supposed to write the various other mechanisms. Okay, how ACE contributes to its hypotensive effects. Now, the ACE inhibitors which are used clinically, lisinopril, enalapril, ramipril. Okay, so what are the adverse effects? We said that ACE inhibitors, they increase bradykinin levels. Now, because of increasing bradykinin levels, there are several adverse effects like cough. Okay, then there is angioedema, alteration in taste. Okay, so these are all attributed to increase in bradykinin levels. ACE inhibitors, they cause release of aldosterone. Okay, therefore there is hyperkalemia, which is seen as an adverse effect. They are vasodilators, so naturally they will cause hypotension. Okay, then alteration in taste, they are all teratogenic. Okay, so we have to remember, although ACE inhibitors are the first line drugs, they are not safe in pregnancy. Okay, so important contraindications for ACE inhibitors: hypersensitivity, hyperkalemia, pregnancy, renal artery stenosis, bilateral renal artery stenosis, they are not to be used. Now coming to the uses of the ACE inhibitors, okay, so hypertension, which we already discussed, congestive cardiac failure. Now they have become very promising drugs. Okay, they are used. They are mainly indicated because they also reduce the progression of the disease. We'll discuss this in detail later on. In myocardial infarction, within the first 24 hours, ACE inhibitors have been shown to reduce the mortality which is associated with MI. Then in certain high-risk patients, okay, who have cardiovascular risk, okay, ACE inhibitors have been known to reduce the incidence of stroke, okay, and they are nephroprotective. They reduce albuminuria. Okay, so in diabetic nephropathy also they are indicated. So the management in brief: stage 1. Okay, so you have mainly 4 drugs which we start with. Okay, you have either ABCD, ACE inhibitors, B for beta blockers, C for calcium channel blockers, D for diuretics. Okay. Beta blockers is mainly preferred in the younger patients, whereas calcium channel blockers and diuretics in the older patients. Okay, so you start with the monotherapy. The first line drug is now ACE inhibitor. If there is a partial or no response, then you have to add another drug, okay, from a different group, okay, so that there is some added advantage. In stage 2 hypertension, okay, we generally use combinations of drugs for their synergistic actions. It could be ARBs and diuretics, ACE inhibitors or diuretics, okay, beta blockers or diuretics. We can also go for a 3-drug combination depending upon the response. Special subgroups: hypertension in pregnancy. Okay, so which are the safer drugs which can be used? You have hydralazine, methyl dopa, cardioselective beta blockers can be used. In case of hypertensive emergency, systolic more than 220, diastolic more than 120, medical emergency. So here sodium nitroprusside is a drug of choice. It's a vasodilator. It reduces, okay, both preload and afterload, and therefore there is a marked fall in blood pressure. We can also use GTN and esmolol. Okay. Now, must-know questions under this topic: ACE inhibitors. We can also be asked about drugs acting through the renin-angiotensin system. Okay. So, in this, you will also have to write about the renin inhibitors, the angiotensin receptor blockers, the ACE inhibitors, and also mention about beta blockers, because beta blockers, they inhibit the release of renin. Then sodium nitroprusside, that is hypertensive emergency, maybe as a MCQ or sometimes as a subpart of SCQ it can be used. Diuretics, thiazide and loop diuretics. You should know the mechanism, uses ADR. As a class, calcium channel blockers and beta blockers. Okay, as far as LAQ is concerned, this is a always asked in the exams. Classify antihypertensive drugs. Favorite question. To write the mechanism uses ADR of ACE inhibitors. It could also be calcium channel blockers or beta blockers. Now we move on to the third topic under the cardiovascular system, that is cardiotonic drugs. We know that congestive cardiac failure is a contractile dysfunction. So the heart is unable to pump adequate blood. So it does not provide adequate blood supply to meet the oxygen demands of the body. So the net effect, what happens in congestive cardiac failure is a decline in cardiac output. So when there is a decline in cardiac output, there is a compensatory mechanism by the body. That is, it increases the sympathetic discharge. There is increase in heart rate. Okay, and at the same time, when there is decrease in renal blood flow, there is increase in renin release. As a result, it increases the angiotensin 2 levels. When angiotensin 2 levels increase, there is also accumulation of aldosterone, which causes sodium and water retention. Okay, so the various drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure is basically to target these abnormalities which occur in congestive cardiac failure. Okay, so there is a sympathetic discharge, so we will use beta blockers which reduce the heart rate. Angiotensin 2 is elevated, okay, and this has detrimental effects because it increases the preload, afterload, the workload on the heart. So you will use the ACE inhibitors. At the same time, there is increase in aldosterone which causes sodium and water retention. So diuretics are used. Okay? And we know that the main cause in congestive cardiac failure is that there is a decrease in cardiac output. So inotropic drugs which can increase the cardiac output, they are used. So these are the four important classes in congestive cardiac failure. Okay. Now we will discuss about the cardiac glycosides. So these are basically glycosides which are obtained from the plant source. Okay, example of cardiac glycosides are digitalis, digoxin. Okay, now these have important property that they increase the myocardial contractility without increasing the oxygen consumption. So that's the important property of the cardiac glycosides, because of which they are widely used for the treatment of congestive cardiac failure. Okay. So digoxin and digitoxin are the important cardiac glycosides. Okay, so there are certain differences between these drugs. Like digoxin has a lower bioavailability compared to digitoxin. As far as the half-life is concerned, the half-life of digoxin is lesser compared to digitoxin, 36 hours compared to 5 days for digitoxin. The plasma protein binding for digoxin is also less compared to digitoxin. Now coming to the mechanism of action of these cardiac glycosides, these drugs basically inhibit the sodium potassium ATPase. Okay, now these sodium potassium ATPase are present in the cardiac cells. So once these sodium potassium ATPase are inhibited, there will be intracellular accumulation of sodium. Intracellular accumulation of sodium decreases the extrusion of calcium through the sodium-calcium exchanger. And as a result, there is also intracellular accumulation of calcium. Now, this increase in intracellular calcium will also cause efflux or influx of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So, increased calcium will increase the cardiac contractility. Okay, so we discussed that in congestive cardiac failure, there is a decrease in increase the heart rate. Okay, otherwise the cardiac work will also increase. How? By increasing the vagal activity. Okay, as a result, the heart rate is reduced. Now, what are the clinical uses of the cardiac glycosides? Okay, so congestive cardiac failure, they are used. Then in various conditions where the heart rate goes up, like atrial flutter, heart rate is between 200 to 350, fibrillation more than 500 beats per minute, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, okay, 150 to 200 beats per minute. So here cardiac glycosides, they have an important property that they can reduce the heart rate. So because of this action of the cardiac glycosides, it is exploited therapeutically and it is used for the treatment of fibrillation, flutter and paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. What are the adverse effects of cardiac glycosides? Okay, so they have prominent cardiovascular effects. Therefore, cardiac toxicity ranging from ventricular premature beat, AV conduction blocks, ventricular tachycardia, fibrillation are all seen with cardiac glycosides. GI toxicity, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Okay, so they are very significant with cardiac glycosides. And this is very important because these are the warning signs to the physician that the patient is going into toxicity. Okay, so this is something that should not be overlooked and should be taken seriously, when the patient is on cardiac glycoside and he develops the GI toxicity. Certain CNS toxicity like headache, fatigue, okay, can be seen. Ocular toxicity is peculiar with the cardiac glycosides. So there is alteration in the color perception. So there are halos around the objects which are seen when the patient is on cardiac glycoside. Treatment of congestive cardiac failure, I'll not go into the details, but what we have to remember is that ACE inhibitors are now preferred. Okay, so they have become the first line drugs because they also reduce the progression of the disease. Okay, so in the early stages, the ACE inhibitors are used, beta blockers can be added, and in the late stages, okay, mainly we use the cardiac glycosides. Diuretics, depending upon the edema, are added for complete treatment. So the must-know questions under this topic: cardiac glycoside digitalis, mechanism of action, therapeutic uses. What is the rationale of using digitalis in congestive cardiac failure? Okay, then diuretics. Okay, loop diuretics are mainly preferred. Okay, why? What is the mechanism? Then ACE inhibitors. Okay, this we should all know in detail. As a LEQ, what can be expected? Classify cardiotonic drugs, write mechanism, uses, and ADR of digitalis or the ACE inhibitors. With this, now we come to the next system, that is endocrine, and we